Our way of knowing things is not the only right way of knowing things. Mm-hmm. I mean, I believe in our approach. I believe in empiricism and experimentation. I believe in our approach for certain kinds of answers and things. But I think that there are also very valid ways of doing things to answer other kinds of questions with other kinds of knowledge.
You just heard Melissa Beers, our first Part 3 interview from The Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. Garth interviewed Missy for episode number 172 of PsychSessions, Conversations about Teaching and Stuff.
Listeners, if you want 20% off all APA books and videos, keep listening. The American Psychological Association offers valuable resources to better help you help your students, as well as enrich your professional life. APA Books publishes critically acclaimed and award-winning books developed by experts to support researchers and students. Visit apa.org/pubs, P-U-B-S, and enter discount code APAPOD20, that's all uppercase, at checkout to receive 20% off all APA books and videos available online. APA Books also hosts free webinars featuring APA authors. Visit bks.apa.org/webinar to register for upcoming APA Books webinars and to view previous webinars. We are so grateful to have APA Books as a sponsor for PsychSessions. The PsychSessions podcast is sponsored by STP, that is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. PsychSessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter.
Well, Missy, it's good to see you. I feel like I've seen you a lot lately.
I know. I've gotten so much with you.
I know.
So much time with you.
I was in Columbus with you a little while ago, and now we're at SEPA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then I saw you at ACT in fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there another one? So yeah, we said ACT in the fall.
It feels like there was another one.
And then you came, that's where I saw you do the workshop, and then you came into the workshop in February, right?
In February, yeah.
And now it is April. Is it April?
It's April.
All right. Yeah. So that's we've had a lot of time.
We've had a lot of FaceTime. It's been good.
And a lot of good meals.
What's it like for you to be back traveling again?
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah.
I really thought I was going to slow down the traveling. Like I was traveling so much. I was traveling basically once a month. I was going somewhere for a talk. Or
pre-pandemic, you mean?
Pre-pandemic, yeah. 2019, I was going somewhere once a month, and I was like, it's kind of nice not going somewhere all the time. So I'm going to dial that back. And then it didn't take very long for that to
right, when the opportunities. Yeah.
Right, then you say, I would like to go to this conference, or I want to see my friends, or I want to give this talk. So it's easy. It happens quickly.
Well, I pulled you aside when we were. It might have even been before I came to Columbus, but at some point I just said, I know you've got this new job. I want to talk to you about it. Plus, I think that people who are friends with you on social media, or who see you post, or people who listen to PsychSessions, they've kind of heard a lot of your story in the last few years, right? Yeah. And you were one of our PsychSessions early kind of episodes, and then Eric did an update with you a year ago, maybe?
Maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, but then your job changed. So if people want to know the history of Missy.
All my dramatic stories.
Well, I think that is incredibly helpful for some people to hear. And I think there's a lot of people in this community who care about you. And so it is nice to have, to know you're doing well.
Thank you.
And well, actually, you're thriving. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is a miracle, kind of, that I didn't think would happen.
Yeah.
It's great, yeah.
So can you just remind us and we covered this, but in the first time I interviewed you, but remind me your career path trajectory, just like the summary of, So go ahead.
All right. So I went to graduate school, social psychology. I loved social psychology. But while I was in graduate school, I decided, I'm not sure academia is the right path. I don't think academia is not working out. So I need to do something else. And I didn't really want to move all over the country. My husband was in Columbus and I wanted to be in Columbus. And so I got some jobs in industry, and I worked in government for a while, and I worked in research consulting for a while, which I really loved. And I just found I was teaching people a lot of things. I felt like I was bringing those teaching skills. And I just kind of missed my psychology roots, so I reached back out to my because I graduated from Ohio State as an undergrad, and I reached out to some connections there. I was like, if you ever need somebody just to pick up a class every now and then, This was back before lecturers were really a thing, before contingent faculties and teachers were really, commonplace. It was very unusual. I think I definitely was one of the first people who was a full-time lecturer at Ohio State. And it didn't start that way. I just really was picking up a class here, a class there. I was still doing my job. I loved my other work. And I actually continued to do both of them for many years. Teach part-time, which was really like 6 classes a year. And then I worked in industry and research consulting and things like that, which gave me lots of access to different kind of clients and problems and really cool real world things. And I could use them as examples in like my classes that I taught and show students how applicable things were in the real world. And then I could kind of keep current on things that helped me do the work in consulting.
That's kind of the benefit of having like a foot in each place, right?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. And I think it gave me a really broader perspective on both things. Mm-hmm. So I loved that. And I worked for a while in PR during that time too. And, I always thought public relations was like the devil. It seemed like they were like the spin doctors and everything. But, public relations is relating to publics.
Yeah.
And, understanding your audience. And so I think that really was pivotal for me because it helped me so much. And then as I was teaching, it was about 2005. And the department chair at the time in psychology said, I think, the previous introduction to psychology director was leaving and she wanted me to take that role. And I was hesitant. I had to be convinced to do it because it just seemed like.
So at that point, it was
far afield.
At that point, did that mean that you were going to step out of private? Like the private sector?
Talked to her about that and I wasn't ready to do that. Mm-hmm. So I did continue. I kept consulting all the way up until 2012, I think. Mm-hmm. Like on the side.
So what kinds of things were you consulting about? So like if let's say a student is listening to this and they are thinking about career paths and things you can do with a psych degree. How did you fall into that? And then what was consulting like?
Well, it's interesting because I think it is probably different now than it was back then, but my experience was that most of the time, the kinds of things that you're asked to do are fairly basic data management kinds of things, just really helping. My role was if a client had a question and they knew they needed to do research, but they didn't have the team on staff to do it, they would outsource that. And so we would help them with their research questions and look at their data sources. Did they have the right data? Did we need to collect more data? We'd help them with the data collection process. We'd do the analysis and reports and, help give them recommendations. And a lot of times government agencies, for example, like state government, like the Department of Education in your state or the national, offices, they know they need research studies done. And so they put out calls to research agencies and you request for proposals and you propose, yes, we can do this. Here's the team we would bring. Here's the project we would do, so you respond to the proposal. And sometimes it's just like a local business who has questions. They know they need a research firm. They want focus groups, or they think they want focus groups. They think they want something, and so they come and talk to you, and you're like, well, that's not really going to help you with this question. Let's do this instead. So it's just really defining research questions, data collection, data analysis, and reporting. Research projects, basic research projects. I will say that the stats, the statistics that I had in my background opened more doors for me than the psychology content.
Hi folks, this is Garth, and I want to tell you about a publisher who might be a little new to psychology, but who has been doing high quality work in creating affordable and innovative textbooks for nearly 20 years. And they've got a great name. This is Sumo Learning. That's SOOMO. And I first met them when they came out to TIP Northwest in 2022. And I gotta tell you, our attendees were so impressed with what they learned about Sumo's book and its mission. So the book is called Psychology in the Real World by author Jennifer Harper, and it focuses on psychology's big ideas. It's up to date with everything related to APA's Introductory Psychology initiative, and it's peer-reviewed. And it includes high-quality, innovative supplements. Even with all that, it encourages student learning along the way, from engaging study questions to its affordability. It's really got everything that you and your students want in a textbook, so check it out. Go to sumolearning.com. That's SOOMO learning.com. And check out Psychology in the Real World.
Oh, really? Okay. That's skill.
Yeah.
That's stat skill.
Because people knew that I could program SAS and offered me a job without knowing anything else about me.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you can program SAS. I'll hire you to do this. I didn't take that job, but I was like, that's the kind of thing that would happen, you know.
Right. So you did that for, what's the timeline like? This is your early career, 10 years?
Yeah, about 10 years.
Yep. And then you say yes to the intro psych job.
Intro psych, and that changed my life. You know, that was wonderful. And I really didn't have anyone to mentor me or help me in that job, so I stumbled along quite a while in that job. But, you know, I just really wanted to prioritize the graduate students who were doing the teaching. So the graduate students were teaching the class, and my job was to train and supervise the graduate students. It was their funding, you know, to be teaching the class. And we had a large number of students, and to be able to have smallish sections, we needed many of them.
Yep.
So I think my goal was first to support those grad students so that they could support the students, right? So making sure the grad students felt confident and supported, and that we made as many central decisions as we could so that they could just focus on teaching the students, and they didn't have to worry about a lot of the other programmatic kinds of things. You know, a lot of the stuff that goes into teaching a class. If it was happening 30 times, 30 different sections in a semester, what can we centralize, and how can we manage that so that that doesn't have to happen for 30 different instructors? You know what I'm saying? So it was really about like efficiencies and streamlining things to support the instructors so that they could just be there for the students and do the teaching. Yeah.
Yeah. So building systems, solving problems. And
then there was a teaching class in place when I took the job. It was a little summer class. And it was like a couple weeks of a seminar and then a couple weeks of a practicum. And the seminar was led by a faculty member who would just sit and talk about theory and teaching. And then the practicum was making slides. Essentially, like making slides and making materials. And so I inherited that class, and over the years I really reorganized it, and we used a lot of assessment data to redefine it, to prioritize different things, integrate those two pieces so it was not just talking about theory and then, all you do is make slides without any connection to that. So I did that. I loved it. That was very rewarding. And
what year did you get that job?
2005.
2005. And so that almost 20 years.
Yeah.
At that job.
Yeah. Well, this is my 23rd year at Ohio State, and I was in psychology for 22 of them.
Wow. Okay.
Teaching for a few years and then running the intro psych for the most of it.
Yeah. So where did that intro psych program sort of start and where did it end during your time there?
Well, that was in place. The seeds of it were in place for a long time. That was always sort of the Ohio State model, where there was a director of intro psych, and they were in various ways hands-on, hands-off. You know, the basic model was in place when I got there. I can't take credit for that model. But, you know, I maintained it and tried to improve it while I was there, which is basically this sort of centralized teaching community, you know, a community practice model where you have graduate students teaching from all these possible areas, right? So from clinical and developmental and cognitive and social, and they all know a piece of intro psych, but they don't know the whole thing. They all know a piece of the class that they're prepping. So if everybody's helping each other, then it's great, you know, then you don't have to worry about, some graduate students had never had a neuroscience class. And that's the first unit we would cover in the class. So when we had TAs from neuroscience program, you know, that was great. Yeah. And so they could sort of help provide resources and help with some of those basic things.
Where did that leave you as a part of the psychology department? You're in the department, right? But you are unlike a lot of your colleagues, probably.
I was very much unlike my colleagues.
Yeah, like how did that work? Because I'm sure there's different models and there's different departments, but how was that one set up?
Well, it was interesting because, like I said, I think I came on board at a time when it was very unusual to have non-tenure track people teaching. And I was one of the very first full-time lecturers. That was unprecedented. I think when I was hired, somebody had to sponsor me in a faculty meeting and vote on whether or not I could teach classes.
Wow.
Which was in the early 2000s, right? Which was you didn't have a lot of teaching focused people, you know, it was just the tenure stream people doing all the teaching. But I think as the requirements and demands of tenure increased, people needed more teaching reductions to be able to focus on that. And so that's when the creative solution was to bring in people to do the teaching. And so that's kind of where it all got started for me. So I was a lecturer for a long time, a senior lecturer. And then at one point they wanted to promote me, but there was not a place to promote me to. There was no path to promotion from lecturer. You know, you see your lecturer, your senior lecturer, that's it. And so as a means of promotion, they changed my role to a staff role. So I became a staff, like a director. And it's interesting, the different layers and dynamics of different kinds of roles in the academy. So yeah, I never really fit into anyone's space, but you know, the benefit of that is then you kind of fill in the cracks and you do things in a different way. So I never really fit in any traditional box. I always sort of made my own way.
You gave a talk today, and one of the slides that you advocated for community in you know, places of higher education for faculty or for teachers in general, that you talked about how it can be a lonely experience, even though you're surrounded by people all the time, students and colleagues. But I was thinking about this question for you. Was being in these kind of unique roles, was it always a lonely place to be in those places, or was it okay?
You know, it was very lonely for a while, but I will say then I was very fortunate because you find your people, right? And so they aren't always in your home department. So I found people that had the same passion for teaching, who were in the same kind of different sort of roles. One of my best friends, Nicole Kraft, in journalism, she was teaching focused like me, and we kind of didn't fit anywhere. We shared that. Lots of colleagues I've met all across the institution like that. You know, we have certain things in common. We like to do the work of teaching, and we learn a lot from one another.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me that you would have found those people just because of who you are.
I know.
You know?
I know. But that's what I think it saved me.
Yeah.
Really, it saved me to be able to find my people across the university, and they're not always in your home department.
No. Yeah, interesting. So, did you know those folks right from the beginning, or did you?
Oh, no. Because,
No.
you just do things and you meet people.
Okay.
And I think now there are more mechanisms for that to happen.
Yeah.
But, a lot of departments and units are kind of siloed, and you don't necessarily have a chance to talk to people outside of your home area. But when you do, you find so many more connections. So it's just so rewarding. And you learn so much from them about the way they teach and the things they teach.
Right. Well, and that's a thread we can follow into kind of the next part of our conversation because of the interdisciplinary nature of what you're doing right now. But we'll get there in a second. But
PsychSessions is proud to partner with Macmillan Learning. At Macmillan Learning Psychology, content matters. And these days, digital content matters more than ever. Macmillan Learning's Achieve elevates interactive teaching and learning with an extraordinary range of online course content in a powerful yet easy-to-use platform. Interactive ebooks, innovative assessments, engaging videos and activities, helpful instructor resources. Achieve brings it all together and makes it easy for you to find what you need and what you want. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/PsychSessions for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
My ignorance about, R1 institutions and four-year institutions really.
Yeah. They're their own little beast.
Well, that's my question is, where do you see it seems to me, talking to our colleagues, that lecturing positions, teaching positions, tenure track teaching positions even are becoming more of a thing?
Absolutely.
Right?
I don't think universities can function without them, frankly. I think we need them.
Okay, so this is where I want an education.
I think it's very valid. I think the demands on tenure stream faculty for research productivity in an R1 are quite intense. And I think for people to be successful, it is good that we have folks who do the teaching, and then it's good for people to be able to specialize in teaching.
Yeah.
Because, we've heard at this conference and, Steve Chu, the things that Steve talks about how many things there are for us to know and understand to be effective teachers. And it's not just the teaching skills, it's so much more that we need really to understand and appreciate to be effective teachers. It's its own, it's kind of its own track, right? And to be really good at it takes a lot of time and work and effort. And, it deserves its own respect. So I think there should be a teaching track. I think a teaching track is a great thing. Mm-hmm. I think it is very context dependent. I think it probably depends on your department and in your context that you're in. But I always felt when I was focusing on teaching, like that was kind of my contribution to the bigger picture of the department, right? Because my teaching enabled people to do what they did best. And I didn't really want to be an intensive researcher. I mean, I love teaching about it. I love knowing about it. I don't necessarily like doing it myself. I really like using those skills I love using those skills towards concrete problems, not necessarily basic research. I like science communication. I like supporting people to be effective teachers. I just didn't really want to, I like doing research about that and evaluation about that, but I didn't necessarily want to have a research career in a traditional basic faculty kind of way.
So I know that Ohio State is not necessarily representative of all R1 institutions in the United States, but I'm guessing that there is some commonality. How do you think that teachers are seen compared to research, or how are they valued these days?
I'd like to say that, I can say that it's much better from when I began. That there is more appreciation and there is more visibility. I mean, the teaching focused folks at an R1 are shouldering a lot of the weight at their institutions. And they are doing a lot of really important work supporting students. They show up and they do a lot of work. And I think things are getting better, but still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say about
Sure.
that
No, that's
today.
fine. That's fine. So you get this opportunity. How did the whole transition go? Because if people haven't put this together yet, you are no longer running the intro psych.
I'm no longer running intro psych. So let me just tell you how this all developed.
Yes.
So we started doing a redevelopment of our gen ed in 2016.
We, as in Ohio State.
Yes. Ohio State began to look critically at the gen ed reform in 2016. And I will be honest with you, at first I was a little afraid of this process because intro psych is a gen ed course. And I was really worried about what would happen to...
I remember this, actually.
I was really actually pretty scared about it. I was like, I don't know what the future will be of this class, because if students might not take it if they don't have a requirement to take it, or it will hurt the enrollments, and then, what's going to happen? And so more and more students are taking psychology in high school and dual enrollment and AP. And they only have to take one social science class. Now, as a gen ed, what's going to happen to psychology? So at first, I think my response, which is I think a lot of people's natural response to change, was fear. But
can I go back?
Yeah.
Why did Ohio State want to review gen ed? Is that just something that came up? Was it?
Oh, well, this is the thing. So our previous gen ed hadn't been revised since 1988. The year I was a freshman was the last year that the gen ed had been revised.
Okay.
So it was definitely time.
Yeah.
And in that time, things had changed.
Sure.
Certainly the amount of credit students were bringing in had changed. We were under a more competitive enrollment, so it wasn't open enrollment anymore, so that the student body had changed. The things that students wanted had changed. And there were three big factors that drove that change. One was the previous model was just a flat distribution model. In other words, when you came to college, they said, here, we need you to take so many credits in these courses. And really then the student sort of picked classes, and it could have been what sounded interesting or what worked with their schedule. It wasn't necessarily an intentionality in picking the gen ed classes, or a supported intentionality. The only thing at the end of the day that those classes all might have had in common is that one student took them.
Okay.
So it's sort of like putting a bunch of puzzle pieces on the table and saying, pick some, and then we hope they fit together for you.
Right.
Right? So that's a gap.
Yep.
Two, it was pretty big, and it varied considerably across 12 colleges. So Ohio State has 12 colleges, and so each college had eventually evolved in their own GE requirements. And so if a student changed programs, they may have to start their GE all over again. So it was too big and too variable. It wasn't consistent across the entire university. And third, and I think this is a significant one, it was too shallow. Students wanted to grapple with important issues, and they wanted that at a higher level of challenge, right? They didn't want it. Almost all of the foundational courses, almost all the GE courses were foundational, and they were in like that 1,000, 2,000 course level. And so they really weren't at a level of challenge that many students wanted.
Okay. So these are some of the problems.
Those were the problems that we aimed to address in the
Mm-hmm.
GE revision. And so we had a large committee that first evaluated the GE and then made recommendations. And then another committee was on the implementation committee.
Were you on those committees?
I was on the implementation committee in the group that wrote the learning objectives.
That makes sense.
So I was on the committee that wrote the learning objectives, and I loved that role. We met weekly for 2 years.
Whoa.
It was a lot of work.
Interdisciplinary, obviously.
Interdisciplinary, yes.
Did you get to put your psychology stamp? You get to sneak it in there into those learning objectives?
Actually, I learned so much about I gained so much appreciation for other perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was really the thing I got out of that, was because I do think as psychologists, we approach everything in a very psychology-centric way, and sometimes to our detriment.
Say more about that.
PsychSessions is sponsored by W.W. Norton. Are you looking for more activities to promote scientific literacy? ZAPS 3.0 interactive labs from W.W. Norton are brief, hands-on activities that invite students to actively participate in the process of psychological research and discovery. Utilizing a consistent 5-part framework and incorporating transparent design principles, students experience classic psychological studies like the Stroop effect, false memory, the serial position effect, signal detection, and more. Once they've completed the experiment, students can compare their data with national data and their own classmates, offering the opportunity for rich in-class or online discussions. Bring the science of psychology to life for your students with Zaps. For PsychSessions listeners new to Zaps, you can try it for free the next time you teach. Just go to siegel.wwnorton.com/PsychSessions, and the folks at WW Norton will even integrate it into your LMS for you. That is Siegel, like the bird, SEAGULL.wwnorton.com/PsychSessions.
I like when you say it. So I've heard you say it before.
Our way of knowing things is not the only right way of knowing things. Mm-hmm. I mean, I believe in our approach. I believe in empiricism and experimentation. I believe in our approach for certain kinds of answers and things. But I think that there are also very valid ways of doing things to answer other kinds of questions with other kinds of knowledge. And so I think for us to, and I have talked to people who have been psychologists who've gone to teaching conferences, like multidisciplinary teaching conferences, for example, and they're so disappointed because there's not the same standard of research or there's not the same standard of evidence that they're accustomed to. I shouldn't say the same. And they are accustomed to seeing things presented in a certain way with a certain kind of evidence. And it's a little bit centric of us to think that that's the only way or the best way to do things. It's sort of assuming that everybody else doesn't know the right way to do things, right? And it's also assuming that we have nothing to learn from their way of doing it.
The way you talk about the way that other disciplines do things is
like
to
the
me,
humanities, for example,
yeah.
Or certainly I think we see a good parallel in natural sciences, but I'm really growing an appreciation for my colleagues in other, why they have evolved to ask and answer the questions that they have. Different kinds of nuance, different kind of methods.
I think this is one of the things that people love about you, Missy, is that you are very generous and compassionate, not only towards students, but also to, and I've seen it, I've been there, to other disciplines, and you have,
we should be.
Of course.
They're valid disciplines. That's like somebody dismissing psychology.
Exactly.
Which I've heard before. It's like some people say, well, that experimentation, psychologists do too much experimentation. It doesn't tell you anything. And we get pissed off, right? Like we know what it tells us.
Yeah.
It's like saying, that's sociology stuff, or what they're doing over there. It's just that history department stuff.
And I think that you have this curiosity too.
I do, and I think we all should really, because, in a way, it's just so foolish of us to think that students are experiencing all of these different disciplines.
I love that point. Yeah.
Right? So we forget when we're teaching these students, and we pour so much into these courses for these students, right? But what they're taking away from us is just one tiny part of their whole academic experience.
Yep.
And I think it's funny that we don't think enough about that, or I have never previously thought enough about that. So anyway, as we were moving through this whole process, and the committee writing the learning objectives was really amazing, and I learned so much because I thought I knew how to write learning objectives, right? But then you pick up a lot of nuance from these different disciplines as you're putting these objectives together. So it was I learned a lot from that. I think I would highly recommend people really look at their university's learning objectives for gen ed, not just your own, but all the rest of them, and really think about what they mean.
Say more about that, because I know that my college we have 4 college-wide outcomes, and then we have social sciences outcomes, and then we have psychology outcomes. How should those all relate to each other? Then we have course-specific outcomes, right? So, you are skilled at this. What is the responsibility, or what is the opportunity for a faculty member to honor those, not just honor the discipline, but to honor the broader education that we want to give our students.
Yeah. I think that's where we are right now at Ohio State, is trying to navigate that.
Okay.
Because what we have in place now is a general ed that has still foundations, but fewer of them. So they just have to take a fewer foundations courses. So not quite as many. It used to be you have to take so many of all these foundational courses. Now it's just one of each. But we have more credit in these interdisciplinary themes. So departments can petition for their courses, existing courses or new courses, to count as a theme. And we have citizenship in the United States. Oh, no, citizenship for a just and diverse world. I'm sorry, citizenship for a just and diverse world. And then we have a bunch of other themes that students can choose from. Nature, numbers, mind, sustainability, health and wellness. You know, there's a number of them. And so students can pick courses in the theme that they want. And these are at a higher level, and they're organized around a particular type of issue or problem. So that was the depth issue that we were trying to address.
So if I'm a student and I like the sustainability theme, I can double down and just take those classes that because I have an interest in it.
Yeah, because that's what you're interested in.
Interesting.
So, you know, you can choose the theme that meets your interest.
Okay.
And we have these bookends now, too. So we have a launch seminar and a reflection seminar. And this is where, as this was evolving, I started to get excited.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is such a unique opportunity. So we have this launch seminar that is, every student takes it within their first 3 semesters. And it was developed to answer that question, why do I have to take GE courses? Why do I have to take these courses, right? So it's giving the history of gen ed, the history of the land grant, and also the flip side of that, the land grab, and introducing students to really complicated issues that we wrestle with in college, and how we're going to be asking a lot of questions and they won't all have answers. Teaching them, leading them through some academic skills and habits that are really important, so they really understand academic integrity. They understand, for example, we're incorporating some things on digital skills, digital literacies. And then we have an e-portfolio that we introduce students to use an e-portfolio, and we ask them to build a plan for their what they want to do. And it's all saved for them in like a little time capsule. So that's just capturing who they are and what they want and where they are at this point in their life. And then at the end of their time at Ohio State, they take a reflection seminar. And the reflection seminar begins by asking them to import the content from their launch seminar portfolio and reflect on what's happened in the intervening time.
Are they adding things to that portfolio during?
Between.
Yep.
Yeah. So they'll be adding, you can add reflections, you can add artifacts, you can add examples of your work. We're working on building more connections as time goes by.
What a different world, hey, because I still have some papers, the ones that have made it on my moves with me are like in a box on the up top shelf of the shed or whatever.
I just found one in a box in my basement where I hand wrote papers.
You did. Wouldn't it be though so cool to have this record, all these artifacts of what you did? I don't remember all the experiences. I would love to look through those and say, oh yeah, that was a skill I developed, a representative of that skill, whatever. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. And I think when I speak to the incoming students at orientation, I start by showing them a picture that was taken on my first day of campus, my ID picture, my very first picture on my first day on campus. And then I show them a picture of me in Ohio Stadium at graduation. And I reflect on how much had changed. I have never met a single person who says they were unchanged in their 4 years of college, right? So I think this is a nice way for them to capture and document and be able to reflect on the things that they've learned, the positive steps. Another part of this is just normalizing learning as being not always a straight line, not always smooth. Normalizing that there's going to be a struggle, that there's going to be things that don't go well, and that's all to be expected is part of learning. It's not all going to be easy. It's not all going to be simple. Things change. Things happen that you don't expect. And so really that's what we try to do. Okay. So I want to go back and just talk about the
review, the Gen Ed review, and kind of what you did out of that. But just for listeners, what's your role now?
Yes.
What's your job?
My role now is senior director of these bookend courses. So my job is directing the bookends. I hire the faculty to teach them. I manage the assessment. I coordinate these 2 courses that all Ohio State students will take.
Okay. So how many faculty do you have teaching these courses?
Last year we've hired about 140 people. Mm-hmm. Now, some of them are teaching maybe 1 section or 2 sections. Some of them are teaching full-time with us. So we had about 500 individual sections of the class over the last year on all campuses statewide. I really only hire on the Columbus campus.
I just want people to stop and just think about 500.
Yeah,
that's
almost
so
10,000.
many.
Almost 10,000 students.
And you kept the class sizes small.
19 students.
19 students.
And the way we achieved this is we used instructional designers. We have professional instructional designers at our institution now the bookends themselves were designed collaboratively by experts from a number of different disciplines over a period of a long time, like a couple of years. So the content was developed by folks at the institution. And then our instructional designers turned it into an accessible class, universal principles of universal design, semantic structure organization, using principles of transparency and tilt. It's all backwards designed to our learning objectives. It's all delivered to instructors in a standardized course in Canvas that we distribute to them. So they receive their course loaded at the beginning of the semester. But they don't necessarily, nobody is really the full-out expert on everything in the Gen Ed, right? I mean, we all live in our own little departments. So we developed this community of practice model where we said, listen, this is going to be a big undertaking. There's no way for us to tell you everything you need to know before the semester starts. So what we're going to do is we're going to have these teams, and everyone's going to be part of a team. This is built into the position. And you're going to have a team lead, and the team lead convenes a meeting or communicates with the team during the week, answers questions. They talk through the curriculum. They talk about assignments. They talk about what they're going to do in class. And it's very supportive. We have a large community and then a small community. So instructors share their lesson plans, resources, slides, activities, ideas. We talk about challenges they're having and how we're addressing them. It's very dynamic. And the folks that are teaching this class come from all over the university. We have people coming from every college, all 12 of our colleges. Everyone's compensated as a lecturer, but they're really well supported. They're well paid. That's one of the things that drew me to it, is because the ethos of this community and the leadership in this community is really supportive, really values good teaching. And so we have folks who are some tenure stream faculty, we have some non-tenure stream faculty, we have some professional staff. So it's very diverse, and we have a lot to learn from one another. So it's been really lovely because we have normalized the fact. I think we're lucky in this context because we've normalized the fact that nobody is the expert. Everyone has some expertise, but no one is the expert in this curriculum. We all share it. And
just highlight some of the curriculum. What kinds of things are they covering in let's say the first book, the first course that students take in their first 3 semesters?
Correct. Well, this is the launch seminar that I'm talking about.
Oh, we are.
I'm only talking about the launch seminar.
All right.
And so the launch seminar, for example.
Oh, yeah, because the other one hasn't been taught yet.
No, that's starting this coming year.
Oh,
Reflection's starting this year.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't actually started that yet. This was only the first course.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do another update once that's done. But yes, okay, so what kinds of things?
Well, it's really first understanding why we have a Gen Ed, examining the GE courses, looking at what they have to offer, helping them understand why they're valuable, helping students understand, what they can get out of each of these courses, helping them understand the disciplines. We have some students who understanding what scholarship is, and that scholarship is a conversation. And as you're visiting these different domains and departments as part of the Gen Ed, you're learning about how they have conversations in that field, right? That's what it's about.
I would have benefited from this course.
I think a lot of people will benefit from this class. And so it helps students understand why, they didn't know, why do I have to take these classes? We never told them before.
Nope.
So this is a little bit of that. It's a lot of student support. It's a lot of helping them have access to resources. It's 1 hour a week, and it's satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So it's very low stakes. There's a lot of self-reflective writing, a lot of metacognition, a lot of being creative. So, it's fairly low stakes, but it's really just all for student support.
Yeah.
To help them grow. Nothing is ever done in launch. Nothing is ever finished in launch. It's all about really feed forward, lots of formative and supportive kinds of interactions.
What does success look like for that class? Or like
It looks different for a lot of students.
Mm-hmm.
It looks different for everyone. I mean, at the end of the semester, they have to have completed the assignments, obviously, and they have to have submitted an e-portfolio, the components of an e-portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
That's technically completing the class. But, success is also having more insight into what you want to do.
Yeah.
Having a better understanding of yourself. Piquing your curiosity. So let's not forget that I think we often forget, Bloom's taxonomy has more domains than just cognitive, right? There's a cognitive domain. We spend a lot of time on that in psychology,
mm-hmm.
but there's an affective domain. And right, there's a whole, I think it's kinesthetic, right? Or skill building. Let's not underestimate the importance of the affective domain. I mean, that's where we want to help students appreciate and see value in knowledge and skills. And so I think that's a large part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah. And when or at what point will, with this transfer, I guess this revision of the gen ed or this review of the program and then putting these bookends in place, how will you know that it has done what you wanted to do?
Well, me, I'm already assessing everything.
Of course.
I mean, assessment is a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already doing things I wanted to do, and it already is showing that there's ways that we can improve, right? So that's not a surprise. I think that we should always expect that. We should normalize that assessment is always a process of finding what's working and ways to improve what we want to work better.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing.
Anything surprising to you that is working or isn't working as well as you wanted to?
I mean, in a way, the whole thing is kind of surprising. When you do something this big, you're like, wow. I mean,
right.
A year ago, none of this existed.
Yeah.
Nothing. And there was a course. It wasn't quite finished. I mean, none of this really existed the way it does today. So in a year, we've just,
So everything's a surprise.
Everything is a little bit of a surprise, but I don't feel like I have a new job every day anymore. So, because you just don't. I feel like like we have a handle on it. I think everyone's very excited to come back for another year. Mm-hmm. And we really found people across the university who love working with students and who really believe in teaching and learning. And they believe in gen ed. And so we have great conversations. And there are some students and some faculty out there that are maybe not quite convinced.
Sure.
But, I think over time will tell.
So you also did something interesting. You built in the professional development into the job, right? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I can't take credit for all of that either because, again, that was part of a committee that was doing it. But I was watching it, and as I was watching it grow, I was thinking to myself, I know exactly how I would take advantage of that. And with this community of practice. Because there's lots of ways. They said, well, we know people are going to need professional development, so we have to build in the time for prep and things like that. So I think originally they were thinking building in prep time, which also was good.
Yep.
But if you're just doing that by yourself, and then we have all these sections and everybody's doing it individually, right? That's just, if we can collaborate and share and have conversations together about how we improve, how we can help the students, or what are the students struggling with, or what are you doing? Those kind of developmentally supportive conversations. That's a good that's a better investment of that hour.
Yeah.
So, I feel like I kind of had this, I kind of felt pulled in that direction from when I first heard about that model. And, it's not all me. I work with a colleague, Alan Kalish, who used to direct our teaching center, and lots of wonderful people who have a lot of expertise in a lot of these areas. And so I think what we've hit on, though, is a good model for us.
So it seems like when the university put this together, they they created something that you looked at and you thought that will work.
Absolutely.
They're putting enough resources into it.
Because I've worked in a big class, and I could see how it worked. I knew it would work. I had no question in my mind. But there are a lot of people who said you'll never be able to do it. There's not enough rooms at the university for you to do this, or there's not enough this, there's not enough that. And I was like, I don't believe that's true. And so, we were able to deliver it largely in person. We introduced some synchronous online classes, but we think the delivery method, and the data will help us, but the best delivery method seems to be in person, but we also have to accommodate everyone at the university. So we're introducing an asynchronous online format this summer that will continue. We have a synchronous online format. So, we want to make sure that we're accommodating everyone.
How does your job break down? What's the pie chart of your job?
Oh, gosh, it's everywhere now.
Really?
First year.
Yeah. So hiring is big. Must have been a big piece.
Hiring, staffing is big.
Yeah.
Making sure we're getting the right people, making sure we have the right team, supporting the team. I kind of help. I guess I've worked with new teachers for so long. I'm kind of aware of when the trees can interfere with the forest. And so I try to help steer people towards the big picture, remind them of what the big picture is. A lot of time it's just sort of giving people permission for the things that they ought to be, that they think they shouldn't be doing, like flexibility. And can I be flexible with this student? I'm like, yeah, you can be. Yes, of course. Well, in their home department, they can't be flexible on certain things, right? So it's navigating a lot of those kind of things.
You've been put in this position where you have so much reach now. I mean, into what you do in this course will filter into the teaching of these other disciplines.
That is my hope.
That's
right? Because
crazy.
Everybody who teaches this class now has seen universal design, and they have seen how you design for accessibility, and they've seen how you develop rubrics, and they've seen, they've been exposed to more pedagogy than they have before, a lot of them, and also new ways of talking about teaching. So we continue to give them workshops. Some of them are like, here's how to do this thing in Canvas, or here's how to do this thing with ePortfolio, but also conversations about inclusive teaching, or about, you came and did a workshop for us on their mission, finding your personal mission and avoiding burnout and imposterism. And, I think that's going to be our greatest gift, is that we can continue to have these conversations about inclusion. We can continue to have these conversations about how we support students and different campuses, for example, or different programs. So transfer students, for example, we can now talk about, what are our best strategies for supporting our transfer students? They have different needs than our incoming first semester freshmen.
Do transfer students take the bookend classes?
Everybody does. Everybody does. Now, we are working on a new kind of a hybrid launch reflection for transfer students to honor the experience that they bring.
Yeah.
So it's a constantly evolving process, and this is what I do. I guess this is my time as I think about, what are we doing? Where are we meeting our objectives? Where is an opportunity for us? And what do we need to do next?
Right. And then challenges come up, and you just solve those. And that must be the fun of it.
And the best part was hiring some really amazing people.
Yeah.
Who are really also committed and excited and engaged and want to participate in this as well. So I think our team is going to grow. Yeah,
that room of people, all those folks that I met when I was there, wonderful. They were so impressive. I just, I was really blown away by them. They loved teaching. Yep. And they were from every discipline.
Oh, Spanish, human resources. Who else was in that room? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Tons of people.
There's lots.
I can't even remember off the top of my head. But lots of people. And then professional staff who work in careers and advising, and they face with all kinds of students in the different student experience.
Who was the woman I met, and she is maybe the leading researcher in the world on sea anemones?
Well, that is my boss.
That's your boss, yeah.
Our dean, that is Meg Daly.
That's right.
And she is a biologist, and she is the world's leading expert on sea anemones.
Yeah.
And she is also a brilliant, badass of a leader. I mean, she is an inspiration in every way. Yeah. And so working for her is also a huge plus for me.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something about her.
She has a vision. She sees the vision of this. And Alan Kalish, my other colleague, they have a vision, and they are, they make a lot of things happen.
So we talked about 3 challenges, or 3 things that this general ed revision was supposed to address. Remind me what those are. One, it wasn't going deep enough, so that's what you did with the themes, right? It was too variable.
Yep. So everybody has the same curriculum. This is the first time in the history of our university that we have one shared curriculum for gen ed, and that there's one class that every student takes.
Right.
I mean, think about that.
Now,
what an opportunity.
If I'm teaching that class and you're teaching that class, what control do we have independently?
Beautiful question.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have a standard curriculum.
Yeah.
We have standard assignments.
Yeah.
But the way you deliver that and interact with it is really going to be up to you. So that's what we support, right? Is those degrees of freedom. So we have standardization in terms of the curriculum, the content, the assignments, and all of that is designed very thoughtfully around the learning objectives and also building skills in the e-portfolio. So it's all, this is why you have professional designers. I could never, and I've worked on course design, right? But I could never design a class like this because it's professionally done. It's magnificent. And so, we all have that, but then what you do when you're meeting with the students, that's up to you. Mm-hmm. So that's where you bring your special sauce, right? That's where you bring your, you can flavor, you bring your flavor, right? So your discipline is your flavor. And then we can learn what other people are doing and how they approach it. And we've learned, some people have learned a lot from interacting with folks on their teams that are from different disciplines.
Oh my goodness. I could see you doing as part of your professional development, like a showcase where people are bringing their best and showing off what they do for this. We did
a little bit of that in the December.
That's fun.
At our first semester. I think we'll be doing that again because people love to see. It's just like in psychology, right? We love to see what other people are doing.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
So it's just a little different context, but it's the same basic principle.
What was the third challenge or the third problem that
it was
we weren't telling them.
Addressing? We weren't telling them why we had a gen ed, and so that's what the bookends are doing.
Yep.
Launch is helping them understand the benefits and the rationale and why we have this for them.
Yeah. Gosh, that would have been so helpful for me. I whenever I hear people talking about just some of the great things that they're doing, I always grieve the fact as a first generation college student that I never had any of it, right? And so you're so behind. And
this is kind of like a level the playing field kind of experience.
Sure
too.
will. Yeah.
And it's also a safety net because we have an opportunity to connect with every single student.
Yep.
So we also, when students are in trouble, we have a small class. There's a person that they can talk to. We have early warning signs. We can tell if somebody's struggling. We can put things in place to help them in a way that we haven't before. So there's a retention and a student support benefit. There's an instructional benefit, right? Because the more that we invest in these teachers who are also working throughout the university, and the more we invest in them and support their skill development and their understanding of pedagogy, then we're supporting them in the other things that they do as well.
Well, and it's going to benefit the university, right? Because retention's going to increase, I imagine, right? If you get them started well. I imagine that a lot of loss of students dropping out of college probably happens earlier rather than later.
Well, I think we're going to look at all those data. That's the other thing that's exciting to me is now I'm going to be able to interact with those data in a different way than I have been just in one department. And honestly, we spend all our time in just one little department. When you're out of that department and you see the whole landscape of a university, you really appreciate that interdisciplinarity. And I think the focus is, and we talked about psychology being a hub science today in my talk. Remember that? Things are interdisciplinary. The future is not just psychology doing psychology. The future is psychology being engaged in interdisciplinarity. And that's what our gen ed is all about. It's all about interdisciplinarity. It's an integrated GE where these themes that they're taking are multidisciplinary, right? There's not just one discipline that's doing sustainability. There's not one discipline that's doing wellness. There's not one discipline that's doing citizenship. Many are, and they can choose from many different disciplines to satisfy a theme. So you get broader exposure.
And how many?
And we have one very unique opportunity where instructors can create team taught courses. So you can create a team taught course with someone in another department about the same thing. So we haven't seen a whole lot of those, but I'm really hopeful because that's exciting.
Yeah.
Right? So you can get a course maybe taught by people from two different disciplines looking at the same problem from different angles.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the future.
We have those at our college, and
that's the future.
They are really fun for faculty and students.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a different kind of experience, and you usually get more. I think you probably get more creative faculty taking more risks who are probably doing those kinds of courses together. Openness, they probably score higher on openness, right?
There's a lot of options within, like between the bookends, you know, the books on the shelf. There's a lot of options for people to be leveraging new pedagogy and developing courses with high impact practices. And so I think we're just at the very beginning of this effort. I think it's going to take a long time because it's a big culture shift from our old GE, which was in place for 30 years. But we have a lot of young faculty now who want to do things differently. And, we have students coming to college better prepared than ever. So I'm really excited about it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm really excited about it.
So just a couple more questions. The objectives that you all designed, that Ohio State designed or came up with for this Gen Ed review, how many were there? I just, as a matter of curiosity, were there a lot of objectives?
We had more before.
Okay.
I will say this was one of the things that I went into it with a personal mission, is to make them more accessible and understandable. Yep. Because our previous objectives had been written by faculty many years ago, and they were very... they weren't exactly accessible to students, right? So it took a lot of effort that they were not student facing. In other words, they weren't written to be student facing. They were written to be faculty facing, which is very different. So I remember in my job as an intro psych, we spent a lot of time just helping the instructors understand the learning objectives. Like, what does this mean? How does this translate into what we're doing? Because they were at this really high level. And so I really cared a lot about streamlining them. So not just cutting them down, but also making them more clear about what it is that we are talking about. There were some words in our previous learning objectives that if you Googled the word, the only place it came up on the internet was in our learning objectives. Oh my. So it was like, that's not exactly what we want. So Alan Kalish led this process, and there were a bunch of people on this committee. Another colleague of mine from biology who was wonderful kind of co-directed the committee, and we culled them down so there were fewer per course. I can't give you an exact number, but there are many fewer of them, and they're more direct now. Yeah, they're not completely wildly different, but they're more direct, and I think there's some more contemporary issues reflected in them.
Yeah.
And they're designed to be assessed. So they're not designed to be the same for 30 years.
Right.
They're designed so that we have a cycle of assessment that these are going to be evaluated, and they may need to be revised. They're not just going to be written in stone.
What is that cycle? Is that already set?
Yeah, it started this year. So this was a planning year, and it's like on a rotating basis. So launch and writing and information literacy and math, stats, quantitative, those 3 GE groups are collecting data next year for analysis and reporting, and then next year another set will start, and so it's going to be rotating. Everybody should be collecting data, but we only really are required to report it according to the cycle. But we're collecting data and launch all the time. So
wow, yeah. How do you in your little corner of this whole overhaul. How do you interact? Do you have interaction with the themes, the objectives, other than kind of introducing students to them, or is
me personally?
Well, in your job, how do you? Maybe this isn't a good question.
It behooves us all to know these themes, right? Like it behooves everyone to understand what our agenda is right now, because we're all our students are interacting with it.
Right.
And so it behooves us all to understand at any institution what's going on with your gen ed.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of times in a lot of places you get the enrollments because of the gen ed, but you don't really want to teach to the gen ed. I've experienced people who just want to teach their course the way they want to teach their course, and they don't really want to change it or adapt it to suit the learning objectives that the gen ed is asking them to fulfill for the university. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that is our obligation, and they're not bad, and they can change, right? Like, it's not bad to teach to learning objectives. It actually fits into the larger picture of what your institution wants. And learning objectives are always subject to change.
Yeah,
But we're not just teaching for our own sake, right? We're teaching students for the whole experience of being at the university. So we can't be.
It's a mind shift, though. It's a mind shift for psychologists to say. I mean, because on one hand, we say, most students will only ever take one psychology course. So we
get real greedy.
Yeah, we need to give them psychology. We need to, it's the most important thing.
But what if psychology was infused in many places in the gen ed? And then it's not all about what they get out of one class.
Right.
Which is kind of futile.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So this is why I think when I'm seeing, I was just here in New Orleans for a gen ed conference a couple months ago, and what you're seeing is more interdisciplinarity and more integration. And it's not just about this distribution model of picking classes and the student putting them together. It's really more intentionality, and this, I think, is our future. And this is where I think psychology also has a great place to shine. Just like many disciplines will have a great place to shine. In that next step, we say, oh yeah, we're a hub science. Okay, well, what does that mean in practice? Let's show our students what that means.
What's a general education conference like?
It was really interesting. It was a lot of people, a lot of the same people. You would have known a lot of people there. Teaching center folks,
sure,
who are sometimes psychologists, and a lot of people that you see that are publishing papers, that are on Twitter, in academic Twitter circles. So I was actually comforted that I saw a lot of people that, Jen Thompson, of course, was there. People who are working on their own GEs in their institutions, and then people who have already done the work. We were there kind of talking about what we had done and where we were.
Well, I'm inspired to think more deeply about my college's outcomes and think about the way they interact with my courses.
I think, and if they're not good, then you should say, hey, we should change these.
Ours actually are really good and memorable and short. And
do you talk to your students about them?
No, not that much.
Maybe you could do that.
Well, I know I can, because I know that they interact really well with psychology. Actually.
Yeah, that's the other thing I found is that in intro psych at Ohio State, we had the university learning objectives for the GE. We had the state of Ohio transfer module objectives. Then we had the IPI objectives that came in, right? And they weren't all that different. You can kind of cluster them together. There's a lot of overlap. So when you're thinking about assessing, you don't necessarily need to assess 17 separate things. You could cluster them together.
Yep.
And you're kind of addressing the same thing. So it's not that bad. But they're in line with what you're already doing. It's just a matter of kind of amplifying them a little bit or paying attention to them. Yeah.
I'm also just realizing how difficult it must be to be a dean or a provost.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Because everybody is so protective of their own discipline.
They have a really hard job. But I think, again, you have to be patient change agent. It doesn't happen. Change doesn't happen all at once or overnight. It's going to be a slow process.
Yeah.
And you can't expect things to be totally different in any organization overnight. But I think it's great. And I also, just going back to where we started this conversation and thinking about how I had this really non-traditional academic path, I feel like that has at times been such a challenge and a source of heartache for me that I didn't feel like I fit anywhere. But now I think it's an asset. Yeah. Because I don't feel constrained by any one perspective. I don't feel, I think that the opportunity is in this, we kind of have to redefine the way things work in the academy to some extent. And I think maybe that's the future too. I think that's a good thing.
Well, I love it. I can't wait to hear how this goes for you.
Thanks.
Because you're a year
Just
in?
a year in. Yeah, just a year in.
A year in, and you'll
we just finished launch for the first time. We'll do reflection next year.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear about that. So we will have you back on. You can talk about reflection, what you learned about that.
I think people want to hear.
They will. I mean, I think there's a bit of a, I think there's a hunger out there for people to hear this, to hear about interdisciplinary education.
There's
general
so much
education.
potential for it. It's going to be so great, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Missy.
Thanks.
And I don't know. Let's go grab a drink.
Let's go. All right. I'm ready for that.